Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pet Food Puzzle Guy. And I have to say it's been a few weeks now that I've been gone, and I just first of all, to all my Nutrition Mission family out there, thank you for all the wonderful messages of encouragement and prayers and thoughts about us losing Bella a few weeks ago. Yeah, it's hard. You all know, you've been through it. If you're on my channel, you know exactly what we're going through and what we went through. And when you're retired, I think it's a little worse because when I think of the losses, family members, my parents, other dogs in our lives, you're at a stage of life where you're really busy and you want to mourn, you want to go through all the stages of mourning, which unfortunately you can't skip any stages. You got to go through them all. At least I believe so. But when you're retired, and the last couple of weeks of Bella's life was so much focus on her and taking her for walks, doing all the favorite things she loved to do, and you don't have that job to get to or that schedule that keeps you busy. So, it kind of takes your mind off it. So it's a little harder when that's all you can do is focus on it. And it worked out really well for Karen and I because we had planned every May we do a hiking trip in Utah, a different section of Utah. And so we had that scheduled already well in advance. And so after Bella passed, it was about 4 or 5 days of dealing with that. And then we left for a week in Utah. And it was really good to get away from the routines and everything. And but then, of course, you come back. And you come back to the same, her bed was in the corner over there. And Zuzu and I, especially toward the end, we'd go for walks with Bella, and there were 2 places in our 2 different routes where the sidewalks are, messed up, and there's about a jump, about this tall, which of course was nothing in the past, but now it became a big obstacle for Bella. So we call them Bella's Jump now because she'd run up to it, and some days she could go right over it, and other days when she wasn't doing so well, it would really take a lot of effort. And so those are called Bella's Jump. So, you have to go through all those routines without your furry friend there, and that takes time. So I guess we delayed it a little going to Utah. Now we're back and kind of going through that. But, we'll get through it, just like you did when you lost, your beloved. And so now we only have 1 dog, which is weird. And, of course, Zuzu was going to get a lot of attention and a lot of love. While we were gone, I was so worried about her. And she seems to be totally fine now, but I think she was mourning a little bit. And we had an army of people coming over the house, taking her for walks, spending the night at their house, everything. And even with all that, we were still worried about her. So the last night of the trip, or the last day, we decided, we'll skip 1 hike and head home and get home late instead of waiting till the next day. So it was nice to get home to her and kind of get back to giving her the routine that she knows and loves. So again, I just want to thank all of you for all the support. It really does mean a lot because, when you go through something like that, you're not alone, because all the folks out there that are reaching out to you, especially on my channel, you all know, you all totally understand. People that don't understand, they can't understand the bond and the loss, but you guys can. So I appreciate all that. I know I have a lot of comments to catch up on. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I just didn't feel like doing anything. I really didn't. I really needed the break. But this morning I interviewed Dr. Bullen. She was gracious enough. We kind of skipped a week, and then she gave me a little time, but it was really great to talk with her this morning. This is part 1. Lots of great stuff in this. She is just such a great resource for information. Probably gonna make a lot of shorts out of this video, but again, I just wanted to start it. I don't want to waste a lot of your time, but I just wanted to say thank you for all the thoughts and prayers and the nice comments. And make sure when you go through it, you let us know on the channel when you have to say goodbye to a pet, because we all want to share in that and let you know you're not alone. Because again, it's one of those tougher things to go through in life if you're a real animal lover, and especially a dog or cat lover. So anyway, enough about the sad news. Let's get on back to the swing of things. And I've watched some videos from Sam the retailer that make me nuts, that I'm going to respond to, because I just can't stand the bad information out there that he puts out there literally almost every day. He says the same stuff, I guess, but it just drives me nuts. So I'll get back to that. But here we are with Dr. Bullen. Enjoy, learn a lot. and give your furry friends a hug, as I always say. And let's do part one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pet Food Puzzle Guy, and I have Dr. Bullen with us again, and it's been I think almost a month now because I had to take a break because of losing Bella, but we
No,
won't go there. Maybe I'll do a video on all dogs go to heaven or
no.
something like that. But thanks for coming back, and I want to just jump in. I want to waste time. Uh, Tell us what's going on, and I'll kind of throw out the questions. But what's been new and exciting in the world of nutrition?
Thanks for having me back. And I'm sure I'm not the first, but condolences to you and your family over your sweet pup. It's not easy, but as we were talking about before we got on, it's one of the part for the course of having our beloved pets. And one of the most beautiful things that we can do is to help them pass. So,
Yep. Okay, let's go. Don't get me started.
and that's enough. And that's
Okay.
enough. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So we did discuss this. One of my favorite topics is the whole thing, species appropriate and
Yeah.
nature. We need to get back to
Mm.
nature, and processed foods are bad. So hearing from a board certified nutritionist instead of me, what's your opinion on all that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I guess before we kind of go into our domestic species and our wild species, and I get a lot of questions about carnivores specifically. I just want to go ahead and throw this out there. This conversation is kind of stemming from a lot of questions and comments that we've gotten, which is wonderful because that's how these conversations really get to potentiate. And so, for all the amazing listeners out there, I want to personally thank you for the wonderful questions and comments that keep these conversations going, but just remind everybody that if it's related to one of these conversations, please make sure that you put it in the comment section. We've gotten a handful of questions to my place of business, which again, I love getting these questions. But because we have to make sure that we are focusing on the sick pets, I've told my team to no longer individually answer those questions. So make sure that they go where they're supposed to go. And then my veterinary specialist, that's going to be for my patients only. All right. So I
All right.
appreciate everybody following those rules. But to get back to your question, really the difference between these species. So they might look identical or pretty darn close, but we have to keep in mind that all of our domestic species have evolved from one of their wild brethren. And when we take a look at how long it has been since they differentiated or deviated rather from their genetic tree, that is enough time for us to see a lot of different changes, whether it's in body size, in terms of gastrointestinal length, different enzyme concentrations, that sort of thing. And so the main question or comment that I see is, why do we have these domesticated species? And again, we're kind of talking about carnivores here that can eat carbohydrates, and yet, we're not feeding, or we don't see wolves, eating that way in the wild, or tigers eating that way in the wild. And so, a couple things that I want to try to point out is that the goal of nature is to get these animals to breeding age, to procreate successfully, and then they don't care what really happens after that because it's really up to that individual animal, that individual species. Can they find enough food? Is it the right type of food? And especially with humans kind of encroaching on different territories and coming into play, their natural food sources are actually dwindling. Like I hear all the time, well, back in my day, the farm dogs could eat kind of scraps and do okay. Well, that was before we actually put trash in the trash. We had compost piles, we had this, we had that. So they were actually, kind of getting more of their scavenger type diet. Now they're eating diapers and cans and disgusting things that can negatively impact their health. So a lot changes in addition to evolution, but also in terms of human interaction. And so when we're kind of going back again and comparing our amazing domestic species, again, focusing on our kitties, at least for now, we have to think about what the goal is. So for my 20-year-old cat, which is pretty old for a cat, my goal for her is to not just survive, but to truly thrive. And were she out, excuse me, I've actually got 20-year-old cat hair on my nose, but were she to be outside, kind of doing her own thing, she would be lucky to live to about 6 or 7. Part of that is definitely going to be, injury, illness, things like that. but the body can defend better against these things with optimal nutrition. And I have definitely seen, wild barn cats and things like that that have nutritional deficiencies because nature doesn't care about that. Again, the goal is procreation and survival of the fittest. And so when we compare our domestic cats who are living into the high teens or even the low 20s, I even saw one the other day. There's a cat that's 30. I was like, what is
Oh,
your secret?
wow.
Good
Wow.
nutrition, right? So when we think about our domestic species that have, decades of research to go into their nutrition, that have recommended annual or biannual well pet visits to catch problems early, that have vaccinations and preventatives to help prevent from really, really preventable diseases that could otherwise be pretty traumatic. And, other husbandry recommendations to try to reduce the risk of injury and things like that. Suddenly we've got these animals that are living decades. And again, if you compare it to their wild brethren, they're living to be, 6 or 7, just long enough to have a couple of litters. And then poor nutrition, illness, injury, all of those things compounded shortens their lifespan. And so, when we think about wolves and we think about our domestic dogs, those guys diverged about 40,000 years ago. And when you look at the phylogenetic tree or the genetic tree, it doesn't look like it's that long ago, but it's a really long time ago. And so, again, all of these different adaptations have made it so our pets can truly thrive. Wolves in the wild live to be about 4 to 6. Wolves in captivity tend to live longer. And that is because of preventative medicine. Even zoo animals get dentals. They get annual checkups. They get vaccines sometimes for very preventable diseases. And even though we as visitors of the zoo might just see, the hanging steak over here, what we don't see is that they are still getting certain vegetation and fiber because carnivores, the place that they eat first on a wild animal, on a prey species, is actually their guts, right? They're going to go for the byproducts, so the liver, the spleen, all the things that have a lot of minerals in there because it's easier to get at those organs. Then they're going to eat the guts, which usually prey species are herbivores. And so those are going to actually have carbohydrates within them. And then after the carcass is actually rotted for about a week or two, they're going to eat rotting meat. And so, and the bones, which are starting to degrade as well. Now, those bones, which are an essential source of calcium, are also the main cause of dental fractures and the main cause of obstruction for these species as well. And just because it doesn't happen where we can see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And
So for
so
those, just to interrupt you, just out of thought. So for those that believe in species appropriate and getting back to nature, you really should just leave the carcass there for a few days to rot before you
so
feed it to
gross.
the dog.
Oh yeah,
Because feeding
yeah,
fresh raw, well, that's artificial. If you want to
it
get
is
back to nature,
artificial.
let it sit
Yeah.
there in the sun for a few days with some
Oh,
bugs on it,
absolutely.
and that would be more species appropriate.
Absolutely. Unless the prey is small enough to swallow whole, which happens in the wild. So if we think about our cats, which is unfortunate because a lot of time they play with their food
We
first.
do.
But when we think about the cats, usually they're going to go for the smaller little mammals, and so they can potentially swallow them whole. But I literally, and I'm happy to show you this later. I was literally looking at an X-ray of one of my patients who was fed a whole prey, and I can see the leg bones in this cat's intestines, and it was obstructed. And so, luckily, it didn't need surgery because we were able to, or the veterinarian, I should say, was able to kind of help move things through. But it is a very real risk. And again, we don't really hear about that or see things like that on,
So is that,
in the zoo, or we don't see it
yeah.
on nature videos. They're not like, well, that wolf, just ruptured its guts because it ate this. Like we don't see that part, but that is a very real thing.
So with that specific cat, was that a prey fed diet like that? It was fed that way on purpose. It didn't just eat a mouse and then
That is
get
correct.
obstructed. Wow. Yes,
That is
that's
correct.
very interesting. You're
Yep.
right. I think we are also guilty of looking at the glamorized part of any topic and not investigating it to see the whole picture
Oh, a
behind the
thousand
scene.
percent, a
Yeah.
thousand percent. And we collectively, I mean, I'm guilty of this as well. We are creatures of the familiar. And so if there is an opinion that is more in line with my kind of personal beliefs at my core, I'm more likely to believe it without doing my due diligence. And so I encourage everybody out there, instead of just, hearing what somebody says, even if it sounds good or sounds like it could be real, you know, play devil's advocate with yourself.
Yeah.
I do that all the time with myself. What are the pros of this? What are the cons of this? And does it actually work out? And then I try really hard to make sure that the references and resources that I'm using are people that actually have credentials and experience. And so, I tell people all the time, and I've experienced this too. I've gone to a doctor and not liked what they told me. I'm like, I don't like that. It is still their expert opinion. And just because I don't like what they say doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong thing,
Yeah.
right? And again, in medicine, life in general isn't black and white. But what I want people to think about, we've got these 23andMe's and all these things. I've got, apparently, according to my mom, because I haven't done it yet, but I've got some part Neanderthal, which probably explains my shoulders a little bit. And if I was a Neanderthal, I'm 40, I'd be a great great grandma. I'd probably be dead, honestly.
Right.
And if you fed me the way that the Neanderthals typically ate, I would not be in the prime of health that I actually am. And so I see this a lot where we're really like health maxing, if you will, ourselves, but then we're also trying to go backwards in time with our pets. And that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense to me,
Yeah.
you know? And the other thing that is important to consider, no matter what people's personal feeding philosophies are, because one can do raw safely, one can do fresh safely, one can do commercial safely. Like there's a lot
Absolutely.
of different feeding philosophies that can be done safely. So I'm not anti, all that stuff.
Right.
But what I want people to remember is for anything commercial, it's a terrible business model to try to make the pet die, right? So when they're like, they just want your money, they're gonna cut corners, there's poison. I'm like, that's a
Yeah.
dumb business model, right? Like if I make a pet food, I want it to be the best damn pet food in the world. And I want that pet to live for 80 years on my food. And I want the pet parents to be so happy that they get on TikTok and all the social medias and say how amazing my diet is.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's a good business model, right? And so I'm just like, in what world does it make sense to like make the customer and the consumer sick? Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Now, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. Sometimes people are dumb and cut corners, but that
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't mean that everybody does that. And it
Right.
certainly doesn't mean that the
Not the
big guys who are
entire
under the
industry.
scrutiny, yeah, exactly, does that. Like absolutely not. So just food for thought, pun intended.
I
So
love that. And it goes back to that. We're just feed all the folks. It just drives me nuts. And I agree with you. It's always good. And I rack my brain watching the videos of Sam the retailer and all these people out there saying this ridiculous stuff. But I feel that, and that's why you need to get your channel up and going because
it's
people need.
it's totally my summer goal. So
Okay, because people need an option of good
yeah.
information because otherwise they're just getting the bad and they make it sound so good. I mean,
Oh,
all
of course.
species appropriate, getting back to nature, getting away from ultra
Yeah.
processed food. It all sounds so great.
I mean, if I
And
went back to nature, I'd probably be picking berries out of bear poo, and then I'd get E. coli,
right.
and
So let
and they
me,
have worms. Like we do that, all of our
yeah.
animals are going to get worms again, which
Well,
are
it's like
transmissible to people.
if
Like
you
that's
want
gross.
organic fruit, you can't complain that there's wormholes in it. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
it goes with it.
yeah,
But just to play devil's advocate, because I'm sure somebody out there is thinking this,
sure,
well, the animals in the wild, you're right, they only live to be 4 to 6 years old. My wife
yeah.
and I actually met working in Yellowstone National Park, and the wolves are
Oh my
always
God, that's one of my
the,
favorites in
the
the
coolest
world.
thing. And but if you said, okay, well, the longevity of a wolf, in the wild versus, in captivity, take away man, first of all,
Hmm, hmm,
killing
hmm.
each other, take away the sad stuff that happens to them. And
Yeah.
if we just stuck nutritionally, if they could live in the wild without those other issues, I think to play devil's advocate would be, well, that diet then would last them into the senior years. Like the natural diet, if you took away predators and man
Hmm,
and accidents and fighting and
hmm.
all. And I think to me it's like, well, but that's not getting specific to the animal. That they'll complain that the big
Yeah.
guys or the industry is too mass market and doesn't appeal to
Hmm.
each animal's individual needs, which
Right.
I think we can agree. That's why people
Sure,
like
it
you
is not
exist.
individualized. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. It is not
But nature
individualized.
is just as mass. There's no individualized, oh, you know what? This wolf needs some extra omega 3s because it's starting to have arthritis because we've
Yeah,
taken away the predators and the accidents, and we've taken man out of the picture, which would
sure.
be nice for them. But you're still not getting the optimal nutrients that
Yeah,
older wolf would need that they're not going to get in the
sure.
wild. I mean, so
Well, and you bring up a really good point. So if we remove, man entirely, we still have to, and I guess the assumption is maybe all of their natural prey is available, but that's not real life, right?
no, that's
So
true
in
too.
real life, we're going to have droughts, we're going to have forest fires, we're going to have heavy rains, and all of that is going to affect the prey species. And if the prey species aren't available, then the, predator species are going to die off as well. And so again, in a perfect world where the weather is always perfect, there's an abundance of prey species, would they, and we take away humans, would they live a little bit longer? Potentially. But then we also have to remember there is that individualism from the perspective of what is easiest for them to catch. So even if we give, we lead them to water, if you will, we can't make them drink. So what's going to be easiest for them to catch? What's going to be easiest for them to consume? And,
You mean they won't know better that it's more nutritious to eat this hard to catch prey instead of this
yeah,
easy one here?
right, exactly. And a lot of times, if we think about again, especially for pack animals, they're going to go for the young and they're going to go for the sick, right? So if they're going for the sick, I don't know what's wrong with that buffalo. Like, does it have liver worms? Does it have like, some communicable disease? Because again, we've taken the humans out of it, which means that there's going to be a lot of, and there's always going to be like in nature, the tick-borne diseases, the mosquito diseases, all of those things. But once humans get involved because they're trying to make sure that zoonotic diseases, so these are ones that can be transmissed from or are transmissible rather from animals to humans, they try to make sure that that's, minimized. And so I don't know if they do it in every national park or state parks, but there are some, rabies vaccinations where they're trying to make sure that some of the bigger predators are vaccinated for rabies because that is lethal. So there's a lot of things that having humans involved with can be problematic for sure. We got a complex here, but there's a lot of things that humans do to try to actually help and make things better. And so, again, I would strongly disagree just because science and research has taken us so far with optimizing the lives of our pets. I would strongly disagree with trying to take them back to the day where we're giving them something that actually puts them in harm's way. And that's my job. My job is to do no harm as a doctor, as a veterinarian. And again, I have to weigh the pros and cons. So if I take a bone meal, which is ground bone, to give them phosphorus and calcium over whole bones, well, they eat whole bones in the wild, but that could perforate or puncture their esophagus, their stomach, their intestines, and lead to death. Or I can take that ground bone, which is not in the wild, and it can provide all of the nutrients and actually an easier way for them to digest. And it's not going to put them at risk for dental fractures or all the things that I just said. I had a patient that I worked on with a whole group at my first job. And this dog ended up needing a feeding tube, which is why I got involved. And it was in the hospital for several months, and the bill was $70,000, 700,000. And
Wow.
so some of these things are easily preventable, and luckily that dog walked out, but I don't have that much money sitting around, you
Boy, you got to
know.
really love your love your dog, 70
Yeah, you
grand,
love
huh?
this dog or a dog, right? And
Yeah.
like, and again, it had a really happy ending, but it really helped me kind of understand, like, oh wow, like the lengths people go to, and this is, something I try to teach my veterinary students as well. Like, this person walked in, sold her car, put a reverse mortgage on the house. Like, you can't guess what people are willing to do for their pet, and it was all
Uh,
because of misinformation that was out there on the internet. And if they had looked at the risks and said, not worth it, or $70,000, like,
mm.
I know which one she would have chosen if she had had the information. So, and that's why you and I are here, right? Given accurate
And
information.
I was just thinking that that's why, like these last couple of weeks, I thought, you know what, I'm tired of arguing with people, whatever, but these people are out there and they're getting bad
Yeah.
information. And, now I feel my job is to find great people like you and convince you all to get channels so we can just fill YouTube and the other
I want
platforms,
to, that's, I mean, that is my goal. But one of the things
because,
I'll tell you, Glenn, and I feel you, like when I first started, especially as an intern, I felt super discouraged because I spent time, money, sweat, blood, tears, I've got permanent scars from vet school and the relationship with my spouse that, which thank God has, survived and with my kids. And all I want is to be able to help people and help animals. And then I've got people that are like, you don't know anything. ChatGPT
right,
or AI is better than your 12 years of experience and degree. And it is discouraging. But the good news is that what I finally came to recognize instead of getting sick and upset over it, is I was like, you know what? My job isn't actually to force these people to do anything, right? My job is to present the best and most accurate information that I have to continue to strive for excellence. So, like, I'm still growing. I'm going to 2 conferences this summer, more conferences next year to make sure that I am at my A game for nutrition research. So, I'm always learning, and veterinarians need to do that for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But I've finally come to peace and just been like, look, my job is to show you the doors. To help you understand what your options are, to help you understand the potential consequences of your choices, but
mm,
to not judge. And then you walk through that door, and whatever door you choose, I might not agree with it. I respect that that's your opinion, even if I disagree with it. And then I'm still here to help you when you want to change your mind. And I am a much happier person now. So you and I, we have a responsibility and a duty to let those people go down their incorrect rabbit holes to help address, the common misinformation, and just to take a deep breath and know that we are doing good one video at a time, because we're at least getting the doors out there for people
yeah.
to hopefully choose to walk through.
And I will tell you, you will, when you get your channel going, the one thing that I really appreciate and love is the community of folks that, watch all my videos. They comment on everything. I got so many comments, about losing Bella.
Yeah.
It just, you meet all these great people. And the best is when somebody says, you've been so helpful.
Yeah.
We've changed, we're doing this and it's working great. And, so
It
there is
makes
a
it
lot
worth
of
it.
fulfillment with doing
It
it. Yep.
is.
So
And yeah.
I want to go back to the bone, the natural
Yes.
bone, like the wolves eat,
Yep.
and the bone meal.
Yes.
Um, how do you? There's a wheel, and I've shown this
Hmm.
before in some of my videos. The interrelationship of minerals to each other. The
Yeah.
calcium binds with zinc, and
Hmm.
manganese gets depleted if there's too much of this, and of course the calcium phosphorus ratio.
You're talking about the one from Mark Morris, right?
I'm sure because
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a
Yep.
Hills guy, so I'm sure that's it. I find that fascinating. I look at that and I think,
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yeah. They're all
this is
interconnected.
like, how the heck does anybody make a diet that doesn't have a deficiency or an excess of or imbalance of
Yeah.
one of these? So if even if you're doing it yourself, wouldn't the meal, the bone meal, give me a more consistent calcium phosphorus ratio that I can add into the diet at the levels I want versus I'm just feeding bone? I mean, do you have to figure out how much bone do they have to consume to
Oh,
get
I can't even do it, so yes, it would be more consistent. And especially if one is purchasing a bone meal that undergoes quality assurance, right? And so when I have pet parents that are like, I want to keep my ingredients as natural as possible, then I'm
right,
like, all right, let's look at a bone meal. But I want to make sure that it's somebody that does these nutrient analyses, because bone, to your point, everybody's like, it's calcium. It's actually a crap ton of phosphorus. And we can get in trouble with phosphorus pretty darn quickly, especially
right,
when you add it to the meat. So bone meal is not my preference, but then the magnesium is also pretty high in there. You had mentioned some of the micro minerals, which are definitely impactful. A lot of the micro minerals, those are going to be predominantly stored in things like the liver. So For me, I tend to worry about the micros less and more about the macro minerals, so that that calcium, that phosphorus, and that magnesium. But to your point, if we give, so I want people to think about whether or not if they're chewing their food. Okay. And so if you have a Cheerio and you chew it, you are increasing the surface area. So you're breaking the single Cheerio apart into little Cheerio particles, which make it easier for the body to break down and easier for the body to absorb. Whereas if I take a handful of Cheerios and I somehow swallow them whole, which my children apparently know how to do, then it's going to take longer because the body will only digest what's on the outside layer. And then as soon as that layer is gone, then it'll digest the next layer and so on and so forth. So the cheer is not the greatest example, but now I want you to think about a bone. Okay. So we have a powder that's been ground up. It's still a bone, but it is mechanically processed so the body can break it down, absorb it easier. Whereas if I just swallow a piece of femur, I'm going to poop out, if I'm lucky, the piece of femur. If I'm not lucky, then somebody's going to have to scope it or surgerize it out of my body. So, I've definitely had, I'm just thinking it was ridiculous. My mother-in-law has a twin, which was very confusing the first time I met her. And her twin, Beth, has this adorable long-haired dachshund. I mean, just adorable. And they live in Florida. And she called me and she was like, so she jumped 6 feet in the air. So I'm just picturing this like ridiculous dachshund getting like more lift than Michael Jordan and
Mm.
swallowed a sugar glider, or a flying squirrel and like whole, just like swallowed it whole. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
God. Like she basically swallowed something that was a third of her size and she pooped it out. And I was like, you should take her to the vet. Like it's like, oh my God. She didn't eat for like 4 days. Her belly was big and they kept monitoring her. And like if I had
Wow.
been there, I'd been like, cut that thing out or take it out, like just take it out.
Uh,
And it was live at one point because I was worried and this is something for your viewers, feeding live prey, there's a lot of potential issues. One issue is the welfare concern for the live prey itself. The
mm.
other is that I have actually seen snakes where they have been given live prey and the mouse has eaten its way out.
Yeah.
So it is very potentially traumatic to the
Jeez.
pet
I
as
don't even think about
well.
people doing that. Oh.
Oh, right.
Well,
And
snake
so
people, yeah, but not dog and cat people.
but
That'd
this
be
this
weird.
poor dog had eaten a live flying squirrel, and I was like, oh my God, it was gonna eat its way out. So the point here is that she struggled to poo, struggled to poo, struggled to poo, struggled to poo, finally pooped out a like really disgusting kind of skull thing. So it did not just sit there and dissolve. And they did X-rays a month later, and there were still some of the bones in there, and they just continued to monitor. And I'm not their vet. I'm given, recommendations, guidelines, things like that. But it's important to note that it takes time to digest these things, especially if there's no chewing involved, right? And
Right.
if there's chewing involved, it might break them into smaller, more manageable pieces, but then you have the risk of dental fractures. Um,
Well, that brings up a good, you always give me all these ideas. So it seems a lot of domestic dogs with kibble, at least, they just swallow it. They don't really chew it
they
very
do.
much. Is
Most
that
animals
true?
do.
Is that true with animals in the wild that,
Mhm.
even the wolf with that prey, I mean, they have to tear the tissue off the
Yep.
carcass, but then they just swallow it. So it actually
Yep.
is decreasing the digestibility of some of those
Correct.
ingredients because of their
They're
natural
they're just
eating
chunking it off.
habits. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you look at their dentition, especially the true carnivores, those canines are designed to really latch in, and then they've got all of that strength. I mean, everybody has seen, a dog playing tuggy tug where they're like doing that thing and they're pulling back. I mean, they are so strong. It's
Yeah,
hilarious to
crazy.
watch my 60-pound puppy pulling my 100-pound child across the floor with his neck, right? And so their mouths are designed to latch in, tear off a chunk, and then they typically will swallow it whole. When we see them chewing, it's usually because the kibble has either gotten stuck or because the kibble is
Mhm.
larger than their actual mouth size, or it's designed. A lot of the dental type kibbles are designed to be bigger or get
Yeah,
caught for
sure.
that abrasive purpose.
Yeah.
Um, but usually it's an accident if they chew. And so when we think about our pets yakking on the floor, it's usually whole, soggy kibble. And cats are the same. So when we think about the stomach, a lot of people think about the job of the stomach is, to mix and start that digestion process, and that is true, but it's also a storage container. So the stretch ability of the stomach is pretty remarkable. So these animals in the wild who might not actually get fed or find food routinely, they are designed to gorge. Their stomach will stretch. But then if we actually kind of watch these documentaries, they're not up and running the next day. After they gorge, they are lazy and chill for days
Mm.
while, their body processes these things.
So that gets me thinking because I know this, but this makes it even more true when I look at a chicken byproduct meal or chicken
Yes.
meal. We all know that it's been cooked. It's broken down into, basically a powder.
Yeah.
So the digestibility of that is extremely high because of it
Very high.
being in a powder now
Yes.
versus chicken meat over here.
Yeah.
But yet the ingredientist, the person that's so into the ingredients would say, well, the chicken is better than the chicken meal. But if I take that whole chicken or chicken tissue and the animal just swallows it versus this, the meal going into their system.
Mhm.
Again, it shows it's actually the ultra processed meat source or protein source that's
Yeah.
actually more bioavailable than the natural meat.
Absolutely. And I think the word that you said there is accurate, but also scary. And I want your viewers to understand that there's different types of processing, right? So when human pet parents especially think of processed foods, a lot of times their brains go straight to the inner aisles of the grocery store with like, and just because I say an example doesn't mean I'm disparaging. So like the cereals, the hamburger helper,
Yeah.
the Twinkies, the Ho-Hos. Don't get me wrong, especially my college days, I love me some hamburger helper. It's so yummy.
Right.
But
Me
but that but
too.
that's what people are typically thinking of as
Absolutely. That's
processed.
exactly what they're
So we have kind of chemical processing, but then we have mechanical processing. And that's what really helps with that digestibility and bioavailability. So that's the grinding down. So if I were to take a piece of corn, which we are all probably going to do on the 4th of July, we're going to smother it with butter. We're going to eat that corn on the cob. We're going to see it in our poop the next day. And we're going to be like, that corn is bad, right? No, what's bad is none of us chewed our food. So what we did is we basically ate it, swallowed it whole, and then we see it the next day because that fibrous outer coating, monogastrics or humans, dogs, cats, they don't have the ability to really break down that fiber, which is why we see it. Whereas the teeth and even the stomach with the maceration and the kind of churning, that starts mechanical processing. So if one were to chew their food, it actually busts open that fibrous outer coating, releasing all the nutrients on the inside. So one might still see a little bit of fiber in the stool the next day, but all the good energy has actually been released. So when we think about mechanical processing, that's why as a nutritionist, I'm like chemical processing, mechanical processing. And even
doing.
chemical processing isn't bad, but the mechanical processing is very helpful with different disease states. I have a lot of patients with underlying gastrointestinal or stomach issues. And one of the things that they struggle with is digestion and absorption. And one of the things that I can do to help them is to make their food less challenging. And so I tell them, take the food, whatever it is, getting started, put it in the blender. So we're pre-chopping it up, add a little bit of warm water. Water will also help as well. And that essentially will kind of pre-start that mechanical processing and make it easier for them. And that's one of the main differences between chicken meat versus a chicken meat meal
Mm.
is the removal of water and the mechanical processing, right? Think of it like a protein powder,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
which
just
is fine for humans in smoothies.
it's just so interesting that has me thinking now the behavior of the wild animal is actually reducing the digestibility of those
Sure.
natural ingredients versus what we can
Yeah.
do with nutrition science. So
Well,
that's
and
pretty cool.
again, right? Nature is designed to help them survive and procreate and move on. We, with domestication and also hopefully with some of these conservation efforts, we're trying to help these animals truly thrive and live their best lives. And it would be incorrect and inappropriate of me to say that it's all nutrition. I know better, it's
Right.
not.
Sure.
But optimal nutrition absolutely paves the way. So if we have vitamin D deficiencies, antioxidant deficiencies, then our immune system is going to be compromised. We're more likely to get sick. And when we get sick, we're more likely to succumb from that illness. But if we're feeding a complete and balanced diet and the pet is in prime health, they are more likely to fight the good fight.
Okay, so I'm cutting it off right there at part one, and great stuff. I mean, when you really think about nature versus nutrition science, it really, again, you want them both, but what a way of understanding nature has its limitations. So does nutrition science. But I'll tell you what, I want my pet to enjoy the blessings of nutrition science and not just treat them like some wild animal in the wild trying to survive. So anyway, that was great, and it gets just as good in part two, which you'll see in a day or two. So again, thanks for being there. Really appreciate it. I'm kind of happy to be back, and again, boy, haven't we learned? Treat every day like it's precious, because every day really is, isn't it? You all take care.